So you slept with my husband? You are my sister and you betrayed me! You betrayed me!
In the church, joy filled my soul, but the night brought shadows, a betrayal I never saw.
But the night before, she went to surprise him and heard her own fiancé with her cousin laughing.
I'm only marrying her because of the baby.
You thought you could hide it. Here's your affair.
Lord have mercy!
My son, why bring shame to us? It is over. This marriage is cancelled.
Amara Nwoy stood alone in her childhood bedroom, the window half open, the curtains breathing gently with the night air. The room smelled faintly of lavender and old wood, familiar, grounding, unchanged. Everything else in her life, however, had shifted beyond recognition. She was 7 months pregnant. Her palm rested on the gentle curve of her stomach as if it were a compass, reminding her where true north now lay. The baby moved, a soft flutter beneath her skin, and Amara smiled faintly. It still surprised her how life could continue with such insistence even when uncertainty hovered everywhere else. Tomorrow she would become a wife. The word wife sat heavily in her chest. Not with fear, at least not openly, but with responsibility. Marriage for Amara had never been about spectacle or performance. It was about safety, partnership, a quiet certainty that someone would stand with you when the world tilted. Daniel Kalu had promised her that certainty. Outside her room, the house was alive.
This fabric is better for the wedding.
No, the other one is more
No, the songs are perfect for
Aunties
dancing.
debated fabric choices. Someone scolded a cousin for sneaking food before morning. Pots clanged in the kitchen. Wedding songs played from a small speaker in the living room, loud enough to vibrate through the walls. Amara listened, detached, as though the noise belonged to another life. Her wedding dress hung on the wardrobe door, wrapped carefully in plastic. White, simple, elegant. Daniel had said he loved how understated it was. "It suits you," he'd said. "You don't try too hard." She hadn't known how to feel about that comment. She lowered herself onto the bed slowly, mindful of her back, and exhaled. The past year replayed itself uninvited. The shock of pregnancy, Daniel's initial silence, the eventual proposal that felt rushed but reassuring, the way people's congratulations had drowned out her private doubts. Daniel had been kind, responsible. At least that's what she told herself. A knock broke her thoughts. It didn't wait for permission. Saad entered exactly as expected. Saad was everything Amara wasn't: bold, curious, unfiltered. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, assessing Amara with a sharp, familiar gaze. "You look like someone about to sit an exam," Saad said. Amara chuckled softly. "That bad?" "Worse," Saad replied. "You're too calm." Amara raised an eyebrow. "I'm exhausted." "That's not the same thing." Saad crossed the room and sat beside her.
You don't look excited.
"You don't look excited." Amara hesitated. "I am. I think." Saad frowned. "You think?" "I love Daniel," Amara said carefully. "And we're building something. That should be enough." Saad studied her face, unconvinced. Love is not supposed to feel like you're convincing yourself. The words stung more than Amara expected. She looked away, focusing on her hands. "He's at the Crown Regent tonight," Saad continued casually. "Alone. Or at least that's what he said." Amara looked up. "Why are you telling me this?" Saad smiled slowly. "Because if I were you, I'd go there." "Go there?" Amara repeated. "Yes. Surprise him. Remind him why he's marrying you." Saad leaned in. "You've been so practical about everything. Doctor visits, guest lists, family meetings. When was the last time you did something romantic?" Amara glanced
I
at
don't
the
want
small
to
paper bag
impose.
on her dresser. Inside it was the gold wristwatch she'd bought Daniel weeks earlier, planning to give it to him after the wedding. She had also written him a note, honest, vulnerable, handwritten. She had almost forgotten about it. "I don't want to impose," Amara said. "Impose." Saad scoffed. "You're carrying his child. You're his fiancé.
You're carrying his child. If anyone belongs at his door, it's you.
Tonight, it's you." Amara didn't answer immediately. She listened again to the noise in the house, the expectations pressing in from all sides. Maybe Saad was right. Maybe she needed reassurance. She stood slowly. "I won't stay long." Saad grinned. "That's the spirit." Crown Regent Hotel rose above the street like a polished secret. Its glass exterior reflected the city lights, immaculate and indifferent. Amara stepped out of the Uber carefully, adjusting her flat shoes and steadying herself before walking inside. The lobby was cool and hushed, the kind of quiet reserved for places that sold comfort by the hour. A faint instrumental melody floated through the air. Everything smelled clean, expensive, controlled. Amara approached the reception desk. "Good evening," she said politely. The receptionist smiled professionally. "Good evening, ma'am. How may I help you?" "I'm looking for Mr. Daniel Kalu," Amara replied. "He checked in earlier today." The receptionist typed, paused, then glanced up again just briefly. That pause was enough. "Yes, he did," she said. "But I'm afraid he requested no interruptions tonight." Amara's chest tightened. "No interruptions?" "He arrived with a guest," the receptionist added carefully. "A woman." The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. Amara nodded once. "Thank you." She turned away before her expression could betray her. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirrored elevator doors. Composed, pale, pregnant, determined. Maybe it's nothing, she told herself. A colleague. A friend. But the elevator ascent felt longer than it should have. The 7th floor was silent. Thick carpet swallowed her footsteps. She followed the room numbers slowly, heart pounding harder with each step. She stopped. Laughter seeped through the door. Not the polite kind. Not restrained. Intimate. Amara's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. Her breathing slowed, sharpened. She leaned closer before she could stop herself. Daniel's voice floated through the door. "She's been so emotional lately," he said, amused. "Everything is about feelings. Pregnancy has changed her." A woman laughed softly. "I swear," Daniel continued, "if she wasn't pregnant, this wedding wouldn't even be happening. But it's easier to marry her than deal with the drama." Amara felt something inside her go very still. The woman replied, teasing, "So you don't love her?" Daniel scoffed. "Love? I love stability. Once we're married, she'll calm down. I'll control things better." More laughter. More sounds that needed no explanation. Amara didn't cry. She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone and pressed record. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled. She stood there, listening to the man she was supposed to marry dismantle her worth with casual cruelty. 6 minutes passed. When she stopped recording, Amara stepped back from the door and turned away. Her legs felt heavy, but they moved. She left the hotel the same way she entered. Quietly. Amara did not cry on the way home. The Uber moved smoothly through the early morning streets. The city still half asleep, traffic lights blinking red and yellow to no one in particular. The driver glanced at her once through the rearview mirror, then looked away. She sat quietly, one hand resting on her stomach, the other holding her phone like it weighed more than it should. The recording was there. That was all that mattered. She stared out the window as buildings slid past, her reflection faintly layered over them. The woman staring back at her looked older than she had the night before. Not broken, just stripped of illusion. Her baby shifted gently as if sensing the tension inside her. Amara exhaled slowly and pressed her palm flatter against her belly. "I'm here," she whispered. "I've got you." When the Uber stopped in front of her childhood home, the driver offered a polite good night. Amara thanked him, stepped out and walked inside without waking anyone. The house that had been loud and joyful just hours earlier was now still, holding its breath. She closed her bedroom door softly behind her. The room felt different. Not hostile. Just honest. Amara sat on the edge of the bed and removed her shoes, placing them neatly beside each other. Her movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if she were preparing for something sacred. She reached into her bag and pulled out the gold wristwatch. The note slipped out with it and landed on the bed. She picked it up and read it again. "Daniel, I don't know what kind of father you'll be yet, but I know what kind of man I hope you choose to become. I believe in us. I believe in you." Her fingers tightened around the paper. She folded it carefully and placed it back in the bag. Not to destroy it. Not yet. Just to put it away where lies belonged. Then she unlocked her phone. She listened to the recording once. Just once. Daniel's voice filled the room, casual and unguarded. The laughter. The cruelty disguised as confidence. The ease with which he dismissed her love, her body, her sacrifice. Amara turned the phone off before the recording ended. She didn't need closure. She had clarity. The sky outside her window slowly lightened from black to deep blue. Dawn was coming whether she was ready or not. She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind already shifting into something sharper than grief. Planning. Marriage, she realized, was not the beginning of betrayal. It was the reward for it. If she allowed it, she would not. At 5:47 a.m., Amara sat up and reached for her charger. She backed up the recording to her laptop, then to an external drive she kept hidden in a drawer. She emailed it to herself from 2 separate accounts. When she was done, she closed the laptop and sat very still. Evidence secured. Her phone buzzed softly. A message from Daniel. "Good morning, love. Can't wait to see you walk down the aisle today." Amara stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she locked the phone and placed it face down on the table. He didn't get a response. Instead, she opened her contacts and scrolled until she found the name she needed. Chief Obinanwoy. Her godfather. He had funded Daniel's business 2 years earlier, impressed by his ambition and reassured by Amara's involvement. Chief Obina respected preparation and despised foolishness. He had also raised Amara to understand that silence was sometimes more dangerous than confrontation. She called him. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Amara, is everything all right?" "Yes," she said evenly. "But I need your help." That woke him fully. She didn't explain everything. He didn't need to. He told him enough. "I need you to withdraw your investment from Daniel Kalu's firm," she said. "Today." Quietly. "Before noon." There was a pause. A long one. "Is this about the marriage?" he asked carefully. "Yes." "And you're certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Chief Obina exhaled slowly. "Very well. I'll handle it." "Thank you," Amara said. She ended the call before emotion could slip into her voice. Next was her lawyer, Mrs. Halima Yusuf, a woman Amara trusted precisely because she never softened hard truths. When Mrs. Yusuf answered, Amara said, "I need the marriage license withdrawn immediately." There was no gasp. No protest. Just calm professionalism. "On what grounds?" Mrs. Yusuf asked. "Fraud," Amara replied. "And misrepresentation." "That can be arranged," the lawyer said. "Do you want to inform the groom?" "No," Amara said. "He'll find out when it matters." When the call ended, Amara sat back and closed her eyes. 2 calls. 2 decisions. Years of damage avoided. The house began to stir as the sun rose fully. Doors creaked. Someone coughed. A pot clanged in the kitchen. The wedding day had arrived, but not for the reasons anyone believed. Amara stood and walked to the mirror. She studied her face closely. There were faint shadows under her eyes, but her gaze was steady. She looked like a woman who had crossed something irreversible and survived. She reached into the wardrobe and pulled out a different dress. Not the wedding gown, but a simple blue one she had packed weeks ago for the reception cleanup. She laid it across the chair. Control, she reminded herself, did not require shouting. It required timing. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Daniel. "Where are you?" "I tried calling." Amara smiled faintly. He would keep calling. By evening he would be begging. And by nightfall, the truth would walk into that wedding hall long before she ever did. She placed her hand over her stomach once more. "For you," she whispered to the life growing inside her. "I choose better." Outside, the house filled with excitement again. Ignorant, hopeful, loud. Inside Amara, everything was quiet. The calm before the fire. Daniel Kalu woke with the easy confidence of a man who believed his life was unfolding exactly as planned. The hotel room was quiet, wrapped in the heavy stillness that came just before morning fully announced itself. Pale light crept around the edges of the curtains, illuminating the expensive furniture, the neatly arranged clothes from the night before, the faint scent of perfume that was not Amara's lingering in the air. Daniel stretched, arms raised, muscles relaxing as he yawned. His first instinct was not gratitude or excitement for his wedding day. It was satisfaction. Satisfaction that everything was under control. He reached for his phone on the bedside table. Several missed calls. More. He smirked faintly. Of course, he thought. She didn't sleep. Pregnant. Emotional. Overthinking everything the way she always did when something important was about to happen. Daniel had learned long ago that ignoring Amara for a few hours usually reset her anxiety. She would calm down. He always did. He stood and walked to the bathroom, turning on the shower. Hot water cascaded over his shoulders as he replayed the coming day in his mind. The hall filled with people, the admiration, the quiet envy of other men. The speeches. The photos. The final sealing of a future that benefited him far more than anyone realized. Amara would make a good wife. Not exciting. Not challenging. Manageable. When he finished dressing, he checked his phone again. Still no reply from her. That gave him a flicker of irritation, but nothing more. He ordered breakfast to the room and sat at the small table, scrolling through emails as he ate. That was when his phone vibrated sharply in his hand. Transaction alert. Daniel frowned and tapped the notification. Large withdrawal pending. His appetite vanished instantly. He refreshed the app. Another alert. Then a third. His heartbeat quickened. No, he muttered, leaning closer to the screen as if proximity might change the numbers. The balance was wrong. Not slightly wrong, significantly wrong. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor, and dialed his finance manager. Why is money leaving my company account? Daniel demanded the moment the call connected. There was a pause on the other end, the kind that made his stomach tighten. Sir, the manager said carefully, we received formal notice early this morning. Chief Obinna has withdrawn his investment. Daniel felt a surge of heat rush to his face. Withdrawn? That's not possible. That investment is locked. It was contingent on trust, the manager replied. And that trust has been revoked. Daniel clenched his jaw. Put it back. I can't, the manager said. The paperwork is complete. The funds are gone. Daniel ended the call without responding. For the first time since waking, something like unease crept into his chest. He tried another call, this time to one of his minor partners. No answer. A text followed moments later. I'm sorry, Daniel. I had to protect my interests. Daniel's fingers tightened around the phone. What the hell was happening? His phone buzzed again. An email notification. From his lawyer. The subject line made his breath hitch. Urgent. Status update. He opened it. The marriage license filed under Daniel Kalu and Amara Nwoy has been formally withdrawn as of 7:14 a.m. Daniel stared at the screen, reading the sentence again and again as if repetition would soften its meaning. Withdrawn? No, he whispered aloud. This wasn't how things worked. Amara didn't make moves without talking to him. She didn't involve lawyers. She didn't pull investments. She cried. She waited. She forgave. His confidence cracked just slightly. He called her immediately. Straight to voicemail. Voicemail. A third time. Nothing. The silence on the line felt louder than any argument they had ever had. Daniel paced the room, his earlier calm evaporating. He tried to reason through the situation logically. Maybe this was a misunderstanding. Maybe someone had overreacted. Maybe Amara was bluffing, trying to scare him into apologizing. Yes, that had to be it. She was emotional. Pregnant. Acting impulsively. He would fix this at the wedding hall. Public places always made her compliant. He straightened his jacket, checked his reflection, and forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. Whatever was happening, he would handle it. He always did. As he left the hotel room, Daniel did not notice the faint tremor in his hands. For the first time in years, the future he thought he owned was no longer obedient. And he had no idea how badly he had underestimated the woman carrying his child. Amara sat on the edge of the hotel bed, her fingers tangled in the soft silk of her robe. The room was bright with mid-morning sunlight, but she felt as if she were in a shadowed corner of the world. She could hear the distant hum of traffic, the muffled voices of the staff outside, and yet everything seemed detached from her. Detached from her because Daniel was nowhere in sight, and she had made a decision that had already begun to reshape her entire life. The message on her phone blinked at her like a loaded gun she couldn't decide to fire. She had typed it 3 times, deleted it twice, and then stared at the words she had written, reading them over and over. Every letter, every syllable, carried the weight of 1,000 doubts and fears, and yet the truth of her choice was undeniable. I can't do this. Not like this. I'm done. Her thumb hovered over the send button. She could feel the heat of panic rising in her chest. Part of her wanted to reach out to Daniel, to explain herself, to beg him to understand, but the other part, the stronger, surer part, knew it would undo everything she had fought so hard to protect. Her dignity, her future, and the little control she had left over her own life. Amara's pregnancy had complicated everything. She loved the child growing inside her more than anything else in the world. But Daniel had become unpredictable, self-absorbed, and emotionally unavailable in ways that frightened her. The life she had imagined, the bright wedding, the perfect family, was crumbling before it even began. And she realized with a clarity that was both painful and liberating, that no amount of pleading or negotiation could fix the man who was incapable of truly seeing her. Her thoughts drifted back to last night. The argument. The smirk he had worn when she expressed her feelings. The dismissive tone, the arrogance. She had tolerated it because she loved him, or at least the idea of him, but now she knew that love was not enough. Not when her instincts screamed that he could not or would not prioritize her or their child over his own ego. She pressed her palms to her eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. "I can't," she whispered to herself, a phrase that felt heavier than any sentence she had ever spoken aloud. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about years of compromise, of bending herself into shapes she didn't recognize, of silencing her voice for the sake of someone who didn't hear it. The phone vibrated on the bedside table. Her heart skipped a beat. Maybe it was Daniel, maybe he had realized his mistake and wanted to reconcile. Maybe, just maybe, he understood the gravity of what he had done. But when she looked, it was only a notification from the hotel staff. Breakfast delivery. Even the universe seemed to be indifferent to her turmoil. Amara pushed the phone away. She could not wait for him to decide to notice her. She could not rely on him to respect the choices she was forced to make alone. The baby would depend on her. She would be the one to protect and nurture, to love without the illusion of partnership. And she could not let Daniel, no, could not, interfere with that. She moved to the window and looked down at the bustling streets below. People walking, hurrying, laughing. Their lives seemed small yet urgent, and she envied their simplicity. No one carried the weight of a marriage they had already decided against. No one carried the burden of a child whose father refused to understand the cost of his absence. No one carried the heavy, crushing knowledge that sometimes love is not enough to save you from a person who does not know how to love you back. Amara sat there for what felt like an eternity, her mind replaying every moment that had led her to this decision. The late nights he spent immersed in work, the countless promises broken, the small dismissals that accumulated like hidden taxes on her patience. She had tried to confront him, to reason with him, to make him see the consequences of his choices. And yet each attempt had been met with arrogance, with deflection, with that same confident smirk that had once made her heart flutter but now made it ache with disgust. Her fingers itched to send the message again. The words were ready, sharp and unflinching. "I am leaving. I will raise our child without you." But she paused. Not because she doubted herself, but because she understood the power of silence. Sometimes the absence of a message carried more weight than the harshest declaration. Sometimes, leaving without explanation spoke louder than 1,000 angry words. And Daniel, she knew, would feel the sting of that silence far more acutely than anything she could write. She stood and walked to the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed with exhaustion and emotion. The woman looking back at her was not the naive girl who had once believed in fairy tale weddings and perfect men. She was a mother already, a protector, a warrior in her own quiet way. And she would not allow herself to be diminished by a man who could not see her worth. Amara brushed her long hair, smoothing it down with care, preparing herself for the world outside the hotel room. She would face it alone if she had to. She would face Daniel, the wedding hall, the family expectations, the whispers and judgments. Nothing could break her resolve now. Not fear, not anger, not even love. She had made her choice. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Daniel's office. She ignored it. She would not be drawn into his chaos. Not today. Not ever again. Let him call. Let him come. Let him realize too late that he had lost something irreplaceable. Let him understand that some decisions once made could not be undone, no matter how much money he had, no matter how many apologies he offered. Amara gathered her things, folding her robe neatly, packing essentials for the day. The hotel room, once a sanctuary of comfort, now felt like a cage. She needed to leave. To move forward. to embrace the uncertain path that awaited her with courage and determination. The child growing inside her would be her anchor, her reason, her strength. And she would not falter. Before leaving, she took one last look at the message she had drafted, still unsent, still glowing softly on the screen. It was a message that would never reach Daniel, but it didn't matter. The act of writing it, of acknowledging the truth she had been too afraid to speak aloud, was enough. Enough to give her clarity. Enough to give her power. Enough to remind her that she could walk away and still hold her head high. With a steadying breath, she picked up her bag, slipped on her coat, and walked out of the room. The hallway stretched before her, quiet, empty, a path toward freedom. Every step she took echoed in her chest, a rhythm of resolve, of determination, of unshakable strength. Amara knew that today would not be easy. She knew that the world would question her, that Daniel would react, that whispers would follow her like shadows. But she also knew that the most important judgment was her own. And in that moment, standing in the quiet hotel corridor, she judged herself worthy of love, worthy of safety, and worthy of the life she was about to reclaim. Outside, the sun shone brightly on Lagos. The city thrummed with life, oblivious to the storm brewing in one of its countless streets. Amara felt a strange sense of peace. Not because the world was kind, not because Daniel had changed, but because she had chosen herself. And sometimes choosing yourself is the bravest act of all. Amara never expected to see him again so soon. The moment she stepped into the grand hall of the wedding venue, the polished floors gleaming beneath crystal chandeliers, she felt a familiar tightening in her chest. The space was vast, echoing with the laughter of family members and the distant clinking of champagne glasses. But all of it, the excitement, the celebration, the expectation, faded into a blur the instant she saw Daniel standing near the entrance, his posture rigid, eyes sharp with disbelief. He looked like a man who had been caught off guard by reality itself. His tailored suit, which had once impressed her with its perfect fit, now seemed like armor for a battle he hadn't anticipated losing. And lose he would, Amara thought grimly, because she had already decided. There would be no reconciliation, no grand declaration of love, no last-minute compromise. She was no longer the girl who had waited for him to recognize her worth. She was a mother, a protector, and a woman who refused to be undermined. Their eyes met across the crowded hall. Daniel's gaze softened for a fleeting second, almost pleading before hardening into anger. The smirk was gone, replaced by a look of controlled frustration. He took a step toward her, and Amara felt a surge of adrenaline. She had imagined this confrontation countless times, but the reality was far more intense than anything she had rehearsed. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to turn and flee, to hide behind the walls of safety she had built for herself. But she stood firm, rooted to the polished marble floor, prepared to face the storm. "Amara," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "We need to talk." She tilted her chin slightly, her expression calm but unyielding. "I don't think we do." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "You can't just..." He stopped, as if realizing the words were inadequate to express his frustration. "You can't do this. Not like this. Not to me. Not to us." Amara's lips curved into a faint, resolute smile. "Us? Daniel, there is no us anymore. There hasn't been for a long time. You chose this life, your work, your pride, your ego, over me, over our child. And I refuse to be invisible in my own life." His jaw clenched. He took another step closer, lowering his voice. "I didn't realize. I didn't see how much I was hurting you. I thought..." He faltered, his confidence cracking in a way that made her chest tighten. For a brief moment she felt a pang of the old affection, the lingering memory of the man she had once loved. But she pushed it aside. Memories could not outweigh the truth of her decision. "You thought?" she echoed, voice steady, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "Daniel, this isn't about what you thought. This is about what is. And what is that I'm leaving. I'm walking away from this wedding. From you. From the life you were never capable of giving me." The crowd around them seemed to fade, the murmurs and laughter dissolving into silence. Some guests glanced over, sensing the tension but unsure of its cause. Amara ignored them. She could feel the weight of every stare, but she was beyond caring. Her resolve was unshakable. Daniel's hands flexed at his sides, and then, unexpectedly, he raised a finger to point at her. "You can't do this," he shouted, the words ringing harshly in the hall. You don't understand what you're giving up. You're making a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life. Amara met his gaze evenly, unflinching. No, Daniel. The only mistake I would have regretted is staying. Staying and pretending that this was enough. Pretending that your love, when it came with so much disregard and neglect, could ever be enough to sustain me or this child. He took a deep breath, attempting to regain composure, his voice lowering into a controlled tone. I can change. I'll do whatever it takes. Just give me a chance. Please. Amara shook her head slowly, her hair swaying like a banner of defiance. It's too late for chances. It's too late for promises. The only chance I have left is to protect myself and our child. And I am taking it. For a moment, Daniel said nothing, his eyes searching hers for some trace of hesitation, some crack in her armor that might allow him to claim victory. But there was none. The woman before him was transformed, no longer swayed by charm or regret. She had become her own force of nature, and he was facing a reality he could not manipulate. Amara stepped forward, deliberately, not in threat but in assertion. I hope one day you understand, Daniel. Not today, not tomorrow, but one day. I hope you see that love is not just words or appearances. It's sacrifice. It's empathy. It's putting someone else's life and well-being above your own desires. And if you cannot do that, then you are not capable of being the father your child deserves. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating, almost unbearable. Guests had stopped moving, the staff had frozen mid-step, and even the sunlight streaming through the chandeliers seemed to dim in anticipation. Daniel's face contorted with frustration, disbelief, and subtly, something akin to shame. He started, but no words came. His carefully constructed arguments, his ego, his pride, all of it crumbled under the weight of her truth. Amara didn't wait for him to speak again. She turned, her steps measured, each one a statement of independence, of self-respect, of undeniable courage. As she moved toward the exit, a hush followed her. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Because to glance backward would be to acknowledge a past that no longer had power over her. And the only future that mattered was the one she would create for herself and her child. The door opened, letting in a rush of fresh air, cool against her skin and invigorating in its freedom. She walked into the sunlight, the noise of the city a welcome contrast to the stifling tension inside. Lagos sprawled before her in all its chaotic glory, and for the first time in weeks, she felt the thrill of possibility, of autonomy, of life reclaimed. Her phone buzzed in her bag, a message from an unknown number. She ignored it. There was no turning back. No explanations were necessary. The world would adjust. Daniel would adjust or not. But Amara would continue forward, guided by her own instincts, her own courage, her own love for the child she carried. And in that moment, walking into the chaos and brilliance of the city, she realized that leaving wasn't the end. It was the beginning. A beginning where she was free, where she was in control, where she could finally breathe without fear of manipulation, neglect, or betrayal. A beginning that she would write herself, one step at a time, with unwavering resolve. Amara smiled softly to herself, a quiet, triumphant smile. The path ahead was uncertain, yes, but it was hers. And for the first time she felt the weight of freedom, heavy, profound, and beautiful,